today's presentation. So welcome to the Developing Strengths in Your Students and Career Services team. So I'm aware that you were in Boston, 6 weeks ago now, listening to Alex Linley and Nikki Gautier talk about strengths profile. We had the Boston Red Sox presentation as well. So you guys are all familiar with the kind of introduction to strengths and CAP and the strengths profile. So I'm hoping that you've all completed your strengths profile assessment as well. But if not, there's certainly another opportunity to do that at the end of the session and tomorrow as well. So this is kind of, you're on the advanced webinar for those having already experienced strengths. So what does that mean then that we are going to cover today? So what we thought was, as well as looking at your, further deep dive into the student work that you've already looked at, so how strengths can make an impact into your students. So we'll go through exactly how you might take that approach with some real practical application. But I thought the treat this afternoon, or this morning, should I say, for you guys, is to actually think about you and your own team. So the work that we've done here in the States and in the UK, where they've approached the careers with strengths, they've actually also done it to themselves as well. So thinking about how they can use the strengths approach to strengthen the career services team. So I thought we'll give you a little treat into that this afternoon as well. So that's what we'll cover, but I will give you a quick reminder of the benefits of strengths approach, just a bit of a recap. I know it was 6 weeks ago, but we're just going to spend a minute or two just so I can get you fully engaged as to why you're here and giving up an hour of your time this morning. So in terms of the individuals, many reasons why you'd look at the strengths-based approach, and I'm sure most of your campuses already have started to look at, if not already engaging in strengths. So in terms of the confidence for students, we'll go through these in a little bit more detail when we look at the practical application, and more likely to achieve your goals in terms of, if you can apply your strengths to what you want to achieve and really think about the right strength for the right goal, you're more likely to achieve your goals. Engagement, as you know, and then of course the business outcomes. So we work with corporate clients as well as the university and educators, and of course helping students to think about strengths-based recruitment as well as they go forward into their strengths-based development. So the reasons why they'll perhaps experience those strengths-based assessments going forward and the business benefits. But I guess the two reasons that we are here today is the more likely to achieve your goals for yourselves, and then of course the piece around the student engagement. I also just wanted to say something about well-being, because in my experience talking to universities and indeed the students themselves, I have a 17-year-old son who's going on this journey of application and thinking about the type of university that he's going on at the moment. His well-being seems to be cropping up more and more in conversations. And I just wanted to think about how those benefits of strengths might tap into some of these conversations. And this will come to light a little bit more when we talk about that practical application as well. But in terms of well-being, certainly the conversations I've been having, it can impact students, particularly more in the PhD space. But of course, all students being prone perhaps to needing to look after their well-being on that long journey of education away from home. So strengths will boost confidence, really helping to, I guess, take the anxiety out of the future employment piece as well. So we've done quite a bit of work here around the self-talk as well. So certainly negative self-talk doesn't stop at the student space. It certainly enters us, majority of us, into adult life at some point. So thinking about how your strengths can really help address and bring any negative self-talk into sort of a realistic perspective and address your strengths. It's also important to think about how students can use their strengths today, enjoying their experience. It's not just for career development, it's about helping them maximise their learning and enjoying the time that they have there with you. And the best future self. So we've got quite a few resources on our website about being your best self. So really helping students to think about how they can be their authentic self, not just today, but also working towards the career that they not just would like, but would absolutely love. So that's, a real sort of helpful, I guess, hints and tips around how you might think about well-being and students as well. I do promise there'll be lots and lots of opportunities for questions, but I think let's get through some of the introduction space, and then I'm sure some of those questions will be arriving when we're looking more around the application as well. So really, really happy to take those as we go forward. You've seen this slide, but just a quick reminder on the universities that are using it, and of course the benefits that we've seen bring to not just, as you say, the students themselves, but in the career services and their own teams as well, around having a clear understanding of strengths and the impact that can have. And I would say not just today for yourselves or your students, but the impact in their future life. So I've been in this space for good 10 years now, strengths development. And most people will come up to me, 5 to 6, 7 years later and say, you delivered a workshop. I remember it. I had a light bulb moment. I've remembered that. It really showed me a different way of looking at things. So really helping your students to think about not just their life and education or their life as they think about career, but almost like lifelong skills and how to recognise energy and how to think about what they really want to be known for going forward in their careers. So I just want to pause here and talk about the model, and I know that's been maybe briefly spoken about around your Boston event, but it's the absolute crucial piece of strengths profile that really helps yourselves and students take the action around their profile. So realised strengths then, the things that we enjoy doing, we love to do, we're good at, and we use a lot. So because of that, we need to use them wisely. So wisely means dialing them up and dialing them down. So there may be occasions when actually, even as a student, that you may need to think about what kinds of strengths are really helpful to you now, which ones do you want to be known for more in the future, and perhaps there's a risk that you may be overplaying some of them going forward as well. So it's all about using them wisely. We then look at the unrealised strengths of things that you do well and you're energised in, but the use here is lower, and particularly with students, we can really think about tapping into that potential here around the unrealised strengths. And for yourselves, the things that perhaps you've always wanted to do, never had an opportunity to, or perhaps you've chosen to park some things in this space as well. So we want to be able to use these more. And again, for students, these are really important. And we're going to come on to a little bit more depth looking at students and quadrants going forward as well. The light bulb moment for most people, believe it or not, are the learned behaviours, because of course these are things that we do well in. But perhaps we're slightly de-energised in and don't really want to be known for this space. And this can be the surprise because, of course, over the years, you've been pat on the back perhaps for some of these things. So it might be the case that you've always been known for your performance in detail, but over the years you've just got on with it. You've been good at it and you've got on with it, and no one's really kind of stopped you and said, but do you love it? And of course the chances are that you perhaps don't. So detail being one of the top learned behaviours in the world, along with work ethic. So as those of you that go on to use the tool and coach people, you'll often find work ethic as a top learned behaviour, And I think that makes sense. We've learned to work hard. We have also learned that there's another life that we have outside of work as well. So learned behaviours being a really, really important area for students, thinking about helping them to really think about the difference between performance and energy. And then finally, we do look at weaknesses in our strengths development tool. And this is because we really want to help people think about using them less. So let's look at them. Let's understand what they are. Let's have a conversation about them, an honest conversation about the impact that they might have. And let's think about then our strengths that we can use to overcome those weaknesses. So it's not about developing them, it's about honest conversations, and it's about, I guess, thinking about complementary partnerships as well with those that you may go into work with, or indeed within your own teams or campus. Who can help me in this space? So it's a holistic profile that we're looking at rather than just a list of strengths. So I'll just pause there. If anybody wanted to ask a question, I'm just going to pause. You can bring yourselves off of mute if there's any burning question around the profile before we start to look at your own strengths and your teams. Okay. In that case, then we will move on. So coming on to yourselves and your own team. So here I've just got a few slides that really think about how you would take strengths into your teams, faculty, administration, really thinking about the day-to-day things that you can do with your profile. So at CAP, our mission is to strengthen the world, and that's all about giving you tools to think about taking strengths forward rather than perhaps us doing that work for you or paying consultants. It's all around thinking around, I've got my profile, what more can we be doing? So I just wanted to share some tips that we use within team development. And certainly I've been developing teams now for a good 10 years around strengths profile, and nothing excites me more than the fact that when you produce a team profile for people and actually they do the work themselves, then thinking about the patterns that they have in their team. Light bulb moments for most. So here are some tips, I guess, around what you might do as an individual. So I don't know on the call, who might manage teams, but if you are the sort of career services manager, we can come on to that as well. But as an individual in a team, how can you start to think about using your profile more? How can you adopt a strengths-based culture in your team? So you've got your profiles, hopefully. If not, you can come on and take those following the call. Don't worry about that. But make them visible, for yourself. Share them with people that you know as well. So don't keep them hidden away. So I know that Nikki and Alex mentioned strength spotting as well in the Boston event, and that's a really important part of everyday life. So mentioning to colleagues, I saw you do that, and then also mentioning the feedback that then, or the impact that had. So it's not just around, I saw you do something. It's kind of, I saw the way you introduced that student to that particular employer on that exhibition. I really felt that was a great way in which you did X, Y, Z. So really, actually sort of labeling, naming and giving feedback around the strengths is really powerful, because it reinforces the strengths in your teams and helping them to use them more going forward. It might sound obvious, but the use of strengths language, you've now got 60 strengths that you're starting to become a little bit more familiar with. So being able to talk about them in that language in terms of the strength spotting, a common language between your teams, can really help going forward in terms of being all on the same page. So we talk about complementary partnering on tasks in teams. So I guess sometimes I might be asked, with a team strengths approach, does it mean I don't have to do things? And unfortunately, the case is mostly no, that's not the case. You will have to do some things that you don't like. We know here at CAP that high-performing teams use their strengths 70% of the time. So that's, it's a ballpark figure. I would go for something around that. So be prepared for 30% perhaps not to be playing to your strengths every day. But complementary partnering means that you can share it across the team. So you can be working with one person to overcome a learned behavioural weakness in creativity, but they could also be working with somebody else to think about their unrealised strengths in mission. So it's all about complementary partnering and trying to think about on your team, really getting your team to a place where there's no risk and supporting each other. An appreciation of team diversity and really thinking about what each team member brings. Certainly when I run team development sessions, the most impactful exercise is the one that says, what do I want to be known for in my team and what do I not want to be known for in my team? So using that profile to have honest conversations around what I want to be appreciated for and actually how I could be appreciated more in the team by being involved in different tasks. I mentioned on the benefits, or the research, the goals, but really thinking about whether you have whatever your PDR process is or your scorecards, thinking about how you might approach some of those tasks, thinking about your strengths. So most of us have got our favourites in our top 7 strengths profile, and we typically will be using those quite a lot because they've always helped us be successful and they've got us to where we are. But we do want you to stop and think about the wealth of resource that you put in your strengths profile rather than just the ones perhaps your favourite for you. So really thinking about what resource will get you to where you want to be and how you might get there. So then thinking about volunteering for the right task. So anyone with a strength of personal responsibility might say, pick me most of the time. I'll take it on, I'm happy to do that. But really it's about volunteering, noticing what you volunteer for and volunteering for the right tasks rather than them all. Your success will come from strengths. Perhaps now's that moment to really think about not volunteering for those things that sit in your learned behaviours. Peer coaching, so don't leave it all to the manager. Have conversations with each other, have buddies, talk about your own strengths and think about how you can develop them with each other and support each other. Find people with those strengths that you'd love to develop more of and think about how they do it. And finally, from an individual perspective, certainly from my own perspective of team development and strengths development over the years, having your own strength stories is critical. What you've learned, what's gone well, what hasn't, what strengths you've developed is really helpful. So thinking about your own stories when you for student sharing help you have really authentic conversations when being with your students. So lots you can do from an individual perspective. I'm just going to share a couple of things for the manager as also, whether that's you or not, you can also, we'll share some slides with you. So you've got these to share with perhaps your manager or those that you know that do manage. But there's no good you or the team members are running around doing all of these great things around strengths if the managers aren't recognising the strengths, what they are, and having conversations. So the one-to-one weeklies or however often you have those, really think about what's gone well this week and why has that gone well? What strengths were you using? Try to pick up the conversation around strengths profile in the weekly check-ins. That's not gone so well, that piece of work could have been better. I wonder whether you were leaning on any of those learned behaviours and weaknesses. So really thinking about how the strengths are feeding into those conversations. Give your manager an opportunity to give you some good feedback around them. Review the collective team strengths. So I've talked about running team workshops and the hard work is done for you when you put together the team algorithm for a team workshop. So there's a report that we have that will bring together collective results. And when a team's might have a look at their top strength of counterpoint, for example, 9 out of 10 in the team have got counterpoint. They start to draw conclusions about why perhaps they might need to extend their meetings sometimes because they all have an opinion about something. So they can really bring some great insights to teams. And that leads on to running those workshops yourselves where we've got all the resources that you need to be able to do those. Really important that you set those development goals on strengths as a manager as well. So acknowledge the weaknesses, but it's about what's critical and how your strengths can get there. And if you can set development goals on strengths, you will take good to amazing. You will take great performance to profoundly brilliant performance. So really think about making great even better when it comes to goals. Of course, thinking about what you want to be involved in going forward, really helping managers think about putting the right people on the right task. Focused performance review. So nobody really likes performance conversations as managers, but we hope with using strengths profile, you can really help focus the results. Think about those unrealised strengths, what you really want to be known for, what you could focus on that's a bit different going forward. And for yourself as well as your peers and your people that you manage, really having honest career conversations. So what does that look like? What could you be doing more of? What do you want to be doing less of? What does the next 6 months look like? What could a sidestep look like for you? What kind of fuzzy vision do you fancy in 6 years' time based on your strengths profile? And obviously starting to think about talent progression around the actual strengths and unrealised strengths, the way you can be developing people further. So again, I'm just going to pause there. That's the kind of piece around your own team, your own development, and thinking about taking the strengths into the career services team. And again, I'm just going to pause as I think about anyone with a question or any kind of practical advice you want at this stage. Maybe you guys either haven't had enough coffee this morning or I am covering all the points that you had questions on. So I'm just going to finish this section. We obviously had Boston and Red Sox there at the event. And of course, this was some of the ways that they were using it in their own teams, as well as, of course, the individual, for their individual and team benefits within their own team, because they were using it for students as well. But it's really helping to think about how I might use that in my own team, so that you can practice what you preach with your students. So I noticed a question there in terms of working with private practice, so you don't have a formal team. I guess from your perspective then, it might be just coming back to some of those points here. You know, what can I be doing to develop my own strengths? So we've got we have a website called Be Your Best Self, which is all about individual development, taking the strengths approach forward for yourself. But some of these are you could be doing in terms of, you know, in terms of the, I guess, the goals that you set yourself, in terms of the work that you do, dialing on, picking on the right strength at the right time for the right task. Even myself, after all these years, it's still, you still have to stop and think, right, that's what I want to achieve, but which is the right strength to get me there? You know, which will really help me? What's the best approach I can take for the task involved? So I think some of these things will be really helpful. Going home, asking for feedback as well. At home with your friends, what do they recognise in you? What do they see you do well? What would they love to see you do more of? So maybe getting some feedback around that as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely going on to the student piece now. So there's a question from Ruth, thank you. We work with a variety of undergraduates and graduates, providing an example of best way to use it with students. So I'm absolutely going to come on to students now. I just wanted to give you a bit of you time. So strengthening your students. So again, if I haven't covered anything that you have from the student perspective after this, please do fire away with questions. We want to make this as practical as possible for you. So I thought the best way to start with this would be to actually walk through the quadrant and think about how you can use sort of each of the quadrants in your conversations with people. So the realised strengths and the things that you know now that we perform well and we're energised and we use a lot. How do your strengths support you now? It sounds like a very basic question. So this is more on your one-to-one conversations, giving you an idea of questions, but helping students to really have that narrative around how they're using them. What are their success stories to date in their career? Will help them obtain their resume stories. So thinking about of your own strengths, I'm sure there are ones that you like using more than others, ones that you really feel are critical to who you are as a person, one that you would almost feel like if you lost that strength for whatever reason, you know, you'd lose an arm. So what you're helping students to do in the realised strengths space is think about what's serving them really well now in their education, but which are the ones that they really want to be known for and to feature in their future career, rather than just kind of automatically dive into them and think about, yes, I want all of these to feature. You know, maybe there are some that are serving their educational needs right now. Which ones do they enjoy using the most? So, you know, I have those in there that are great management strengths for me and I enjoy using them. But they serve me well as a manager and as a leader, rather than the fact that, you know, I wake up in the morning perhaps and think about my legacy strength, which is my number one, and make a difference to people in the future. So, you know, really unpicking the strengths and having a conversation that can help them with their resume stories. So thinking about the ones that are supporting them now, and then the ones that they really want to be known for in their future. And then we come on to the unrealised strengths, and then think, so of those, again, you know, if you look at your own profile when you get a chance, what you'll probably find, so we can have up to 7 unrealised strengths. If you don't have up to 7, it just means that they appear somewhere else in the profile. We typically, of an average profile, will have less unrealised strengths and less weaknesses, and more realised strengths and more learned behaviours. But with the unrealised strengths, you want to be picking at them and really thinking about which ones that they want to be developing further, and actually then thinking about how they get that exposure. So in terms of the hobbies, the jobs, the internships, and the extracurricular things that they will typically be doing to boost their resume, you know, rather than perhaps doing that for the sake of building experience, really thinking about which ones of these unrealised strengths could form part of their future, which are the ones they're really excited about developing further, and they will need to develop them further because they're things that they're slightly, they're not a realised strength, they'll need more experience and exposure in. And then what are the types of things that they could be doing around the hobbies, internships, sporting activities, leadership roles that they could take on that could really expose some of these and develop them further. A way that they can do that with their peers is learning from others who they see having these as strengths as well. And when we're doing strengths-based interviews, so the recruitment side of our business, we do spot unrealised strengths in these interviews, and what we're looking for here is kind of an energy, an excitement, some performance, and kind of a real sense of this is what I could be doing more of in the future. So helping your students to think about their potential in this area is really important. They may not recognise themselves in this area so much because they're not using them so much. So for us, it's around a case of, as coaches, it's really thinking about unpicking the ones that they'd love to be using more of and which they think will start to shape their future. So they're the realised strengths. I'm just going to come on to the learned behaviours and how you might use those a bit more practically. So the learned behaviours then using when needed. And okay, so your own profile, a little tip here, if you've got your own profile, I'm hoping you have, is the top 4 that you see in your quadrant. We're pretty mean here at Capfinity, is that these are the ones that you are using the most, but you have the least amount of energy in. So for your students and for yourself, these should be a little bit uncomfortable. You're using them a lot, but you're mostly de-energized by them. So, we expect some form of reaction to these in terms of, yeah, I get why they're here, and perhaps start to unravel the journey that these behaviours have been on. Certainly for ourselves who have perhaps been around a little bit longer, you might have always thought some of your learned behaviours were your strengths, and this is a typical moment for people where they can really start to shape what they want to be known for going forward. So maybe these things aren't the things that I kind of want to be seen doing as much as I have been. So you may have thought they were your strengths because you do well in them, but you've not necessarily recognised that the energy isn't there. So that's now time to do that and think about you can only use them when needed. So particularly as students, we often see them coming in with things like writer, planning, all those things they have to do for their education and all the things that they need to do, but perhaps not really what they want to be known. Adherence is a really top learned behaviour for students, so they typically have to do a lot in the space of rules and regulations, but they don't really want to be doing that going forward. So again, helping them to see what the impact is of these as a future career and really helping break that down from their school age. Certainly I mentioned I have a 17-year-old son. They are absolutely taught still at school to do more of what you're good at. Don't worry about what you enjoy. And I've certainly heard that enough times in school. So helping them to see actually it really is important at this stage when you've got your future ahead of you and you can make choices, it's important to recognise what you enjoy. And then for the weaknesses, your job as one-to-one or in those workshops, will weaknesses impact their job search as well as what we want to be known for going forward? So thinking about anything that's critical there. So we certainly don't want students to focus on these or get more anxious about them, but what we do want them to do is think about is what's the impact of them being here, as looking for a career, as in my current education and where I am and what I'm doing, and what's the impact. And when I talk about complementary partnership or any strengths that can support you, an example might be, so one of the top weaknesses in the world, whether you're a student or an adult who's been in a career for a long time, it's competitive. So being competitive doesn't come naturally to the majority of us. And if you were to think about that as a weakness, you then would be asking your student, so what would be, if you were competitive, how would it make a difference? What would you be doing differently if you were competitive? Well, I would be going for a different kind of role. Perhaps I would have more confidence in going for roles that I didn't feel I had all the experience in. So really unpicking kind of how it's holding them back, and then thinking about the strengths that they've got to actually arrive at that final destination. So if it's about confidence to go for roles that you don't have so much experience in, what other strengths do you have? How can your sense of pride help? How can your connect to help by kind of understanding who's going to be there, and what things you might need to do to influence on the day. You know, what's the research that you can be doing with your curiosity strength to really think about, you know, doing the best job you can with the research beforehand, so that you're fully prepared, rather than perhaps having all the answers to everything. You're as prepared as you can be. So you can see that we're not addressing the competitive weakness. We're seeing what strengths that they can have to compensate. So giving them that confidence to go forward. So again, I'm just going to pause. I do want to come on to the career development toolkit and really help you think about some of those conversations that you can be having outside of just the four quadrants here, in the four areas. But I will just pause for a moment. Watching my chat? No? Super. Okay, well, we're about halfway, so we've probably got, say, another 10 minutes of me talking to you, and then, of course, we can absolutely pause at the end for more questions as well. Thank you for chatting those through as we've been coming along. So we've talked about how you might develop the student's best self using each of the four quadrants that appear in the strengths profile, and the types of questions that you might want to be posing in those conversations. But I just want to introduce the career development toolkit. So we, at the end of this conversation, at the end of the webinar, we are going to give you what we call a starter pack, and part of that will comes in the form of a career development toolkit free of charge, with 10 introductory profiles to get you started with your students. So this will be coming your way, but I just want to bring to life kind of how you might use this, because we've been working in this space for many years, and this is a new toolkit that we've recently just launched, because instead of keeping it all in our heads, we've decided to help you really think about the ways in which you can have many types of strengths-based conversations. So in the toolkit, in the summary, we talk about the strengths-based approach. Of course, we'll be sharing this with your team members, so I know that you guys have been on these webinars now. But we talk about strengths-based assessment, so not just development and strengths profiles. So what are the types of activities that are going on in the world of strengths-based assessment? So we talk about virtual reality and assessment. So we talk about giving you tips around the students and how they can get prepared for strengths-based interventions as well. So really helping students to think about getting not just prepared from a knowledge base of what's out there in the strengths-based world of the corporate world, but also then, of course, thinking about then developing their strengths to get ready for those types of assessments. And that's where we come on to the strengthening careers conversations. So different types of conversations that you can have with students, depending on their context and, of course, the role that you have with your students as well. And we also use the strengths cards as well. So these are a pack of playing cards, and certainly many of our universities find it students like something visual, and we use these cards, being able to pick them up and use them and play with them and kind of share them around. There's some exercises involving those as well. So what I'd just like to kind of explore towards the end of the webinar is the type of conversation that we've listed, and then how you might have that conversation, or how you might use it. So exploring strengths. So we've talked about this a little bit in terms of giving students the narrative to explain and showcase their strengths. So this happens for adults. At the moment, these are words on a piece of paper, probably even for yourself. You'll realise your top 7 realised, top 7 unrealised. These are still words that you understand. You may have read the description, but when you start to really talk about the impact that you've had using these strengths, why they're important to you, how they relate to your upbringing, how the stories of success, the personal kind of attachment to those strengths. This is when you're going to really bring out kind of the authenticness of that individual. So really thinking about helping them to share their stories, and that can be a challenge for adults. Sometimes I've sat down there with an adult with many years experience, tell me about your strengths. Well, it doesn't always come naturally. So really helping students, and we give you those questions to think about, really showcasing each and every one, so they're equipped and ready to explain it to others through resumes, or even on the day in an assessment. So we do something on strength spotting as well. So the learned behaviours, as we've talked about, being the light bulb moments, are really helping them think about energy and recognising strengths in the moment. Okay, yeah, I did take on that task really quickly. I don't know why I took on that task. It wasn't supposed to be my responsibility, but I found myself volunteering for that. So helping them to think about the things that they've done in their past, and helping them, you know, really sort of seize the opportunity going forward by recognising strengths in the moment. There's a piece on career anchors. So this is a real personal one that I think will really add value in terms of the individual's values and strengths. So, you know, many a time, you know, certainly friends, family and colleagues, people have ended up in not just the wrong role, but in the wrong organisational culture. You know, they don't speak to their values and what they want to be talking about going forward in their own career. It's, you know, there isn't a match in terms of getting that sense of legacy and mission out of them. You're really helping them think about what kind of organisation. Do I want to be a Google creative, or am I more around the sort of data and science and analytics? You know, what kinds of, am I away from home all the time? You know, some real sort of back to your strengths. Also, you know, what's your morals? You know, what kinds of organisations might question those? So really helping them think about the type of organisation. So we've got conversations on those. How to get them prepared for the assessment space going forward in a career conversation. So not just what will it look like showing up on the day, what will it look like when you're job searching, how will your strengths really help you practically actually looking for that job opportunity. So there's a whole piece around authentic resumes as well, and personal summaries, how they can create those. And strengthening interviews, so thinking about their successes, what they're proud of. That's a really hard question. Again, adults and students, what are you proud of? And helping them think about, you know, what that looks like in terms of a resume and what that looks like as a personal statement. You know, helping them to gain the right experience in terms of the gap years. So what are the things that they want to be known for going forward? And then how can they think about getting that right experience with gap years and internships to support future aspirations, rather than perhaps just go on something because there's an availability and somebody else has put their name forward. Really thinking about, I want to be doing this in 5 years, so these are the types of experiences I want to be going now, so that I can be building on that in my CV and have something to talk about in a couple of years' time. Certainly this isn't a student piece necessarily or in isolation, but owning careers. You know, certainly here at CAP and organisations that I work with, helping people to take their career and really own it. You know, certainly as a leader myself, you know, how can I get to where I want to be? Well, I can't make that happen for you. You have to meet me halfway. I can help with resources. I can help share experience. I can help, you know, put you in the right direction, but helping students to really kind of own it, rather than perhaps, you know, own elements of it, own that piece around the learned behaviours or the weaknesses, own that unrealised strength that you absolutely want to be developing going forward, and maybe saying no more to things that you know, in that lower half of the quadrant going forward. So I don't know, a student that doesn't perhaps need a bit of resilience, you know, improvement over their education years. I guess it's a hard few years in education, and of course, you know, many knockbacks potentially to come in career development. So building that resilience wall with their strengths and thinking about how actually strengths can increase their confidence going forward as well. And finally, I mentioned the self-talk around the well-being, but future-proofing as well, thinking about what might hold them back as they move forward. So what I've done here is just kind of highlight the types of conversations that are in the career development toolkit, and then the types of things and then you know, the outcome might be for your students. And I've also shared, of course, the how you might have conversations shaped around each of those quadrants in the strengths profile. So at this stage, I will share next steps, but of course here I'm just going to pause in case there are any chat questions. We are going to give you the Career Development Toolkit to take away. We're also going to make sure that you've got some profiles as well to take away with you, and I'll come on to that shortly. But any chat questions? I will just go on to next steps if something pops up. I will keep an eye. So the first steps and next steps is, did you complete the strengths profile? I'm pretty sure most of you have, but if you didn't, you can pop in the word Boston on the redeem homepage of strengthsprofile.com. We're going to send you an email following this event, so don't worry about taking any notes here or anything, but what you need to do. But we're going to send you a starter kit, which involves the career development toolkit and 10 introductory profiles to get you started on your journey. The best thing you can do, now you know your own strengths, is to start to maybe have some of those strengths conversations with some of your students and see how that's going down, and kind of, you know, going back to the career toolkit to guide those conversations as well. And also we're going to sign you up. Well, if you have colleagues that you think perhaps, you know, could support you in this strengths journey as a career services support, we are running a webinar on the 20th of June, which is kind of the Boston webinar and this one combined. So we kind of do a little bit more upfront about why strengths, and then we'll use some of this webinar as well. So if you have colleagues, again, we'll send you a link, because don't do this alone in your university and campus. I'm sure you'll have colleagues who will want to know more around strengths and strengths approach. So I'm just going to read a quick question from Sheila, if that's okay. So during career conversations, we discuss values, interests, personality and strengths. Where is the ideal spot to insert strengths? So with strengths profile, we do, so then you're right in terms of personality, it is the next best thing. So, but strengths will change over time, whereas personality, most people have the view that it's fixed. So because we look at performance, which is something that is less movable, but because we look at energy and use, your results can change over time. So it really is a coaching tool in the moment to think about, you know, the development of that individual. But absolutely, so with strengths profile, it also picks up values. So there's a strengths family called the being family within the 60 strengths that are featured, and within there are values. So it's got moral compass and authenticity. And there are some real things in there that will tap into all of those. So we always think about tapping into strengths at the beginning, because knowing your strengths, of course, will tap alongside getting the most out of your values, the most out of your personality. But yes, I think you're right in terms of aligning it to personality. But please remember that with personality more fixed, strengths being something that, although won't change significantly, certainly as a student, you've probably got more to add. You know, you're likely to have more unrealised strengths as a student because you've had less exposure to things going forward. Thank you for that. If you can see me looking away, I've got another screen here just so I can keep you guys on full screen and I can look at any chat. So 3 things to do going forward: making sure you've got your profile. We will be in touch in terms of the career toolkit and profiles. And if you have colleagues, as I say, please don't do this alone. We'd love you to share the strengths approach. I'm sure that you have many students that will benefit from it. So of course, helping to do this together, and also being helping in terms of the team development that we shared at the beginning of this session as well. We'll send the link to all of these things for you. Okay. Can't see any more questions, so at that point I'm going to end the webinar, but you know where we are on hand. We want to really support you during this journey, so there's more that we can be doing. I'm sure if there's a one-to-one that would be helpful, we can absolutely arrange that. But see where you get to with the starter kit and the career development. We'd love to stay in touch, and obviously we are here to support you. So thank you for joining me today. For those that couldn't make it, I hope you're watching, and we'll absolutely honour the complimentary starter kit to you guys as well. And you're very welcome, Lisa. I hope it's been helpful to you all. So good luck on your strengths journey. You know where we are if you need us, and we look forward to staying in touch.